Hi everyone, welcome back to another Friday live stream. And today I have a special guest, fellow co-owner of Houghton Horns, Mark Houghton, who better known for being third horn in the Pittsburgh Symphony. So all of you aspiring orchestral players out there, this is the guy to pay attention to. So,
no pressure.
We thought it would be fun to talk about mouthpieces today. You know, usually I'm doing a horn comparison or showing off a horn here, but you know, we don't talk about mouthpieces a lot. And I know many of you are starting school or about to start school, and you may be thinking, you know, about a mouthpiece or how to change things. So we wanted to talk about what we use, why we use it, and what other alternatives are there. So what are you playing on these days?
Well, these days I'm on one of our Houghton mouthpieces, which, you know, it's really exciting to see how far these have come. Derek and I designed this line back in 2014, and they've just done really, really well. I've been thrilled with how many people find them to be a helpful, accessible product. You know, we really wanted to design a mouthpiece that was sort of right down the middle, nothing too big or too small, that was balanced and really comfortable for most players. We've seen a sort of a trend towards smaller bore mouthpieces over the course of the last many years. So, you know, the days, I remember when I first started, it was the old Giardinelli days of like single-digit bore numbers and stuff, and I, you know, those were normally paired with Crosby style horns, and of course, you know, these days the trend is a little different. So we tried to design a mouthpiece that was a little more modern in terms of its compatibility with what more players were playing, and I've settled on the H3 for myself. I've got an H1 rim, it's 17.5. That sort of came after some experimentation. I started out on the H1 cup and a 17.25 rim, and I could probably easily switch back and forth because the mouthpieces are so, you know, sort of predictable in a positive way. That's what I'm on currently, and I really feel like it gives me a lot of control. Especially with the bore size and the cup shape.
Okay, well, we'll forget Facebook then.
So Facebook, folks, sorry, we're not appearing there apparently. That's okay.
But hey, YouTubers, you're the best.
Yeah, Facebook.
You're actually getting it.
Let's be honest. Like, Facebook is, nobody needs more Facebook in their life. I mean, you know. Anyway, so yeah, I'm on an H3. I felt I changed to this not long after I was playing in the Pittsburgh Symphony. The main issue for me, I think the problem that it solved for me, was having that smaller bore really helped sort of give me a little extra traction in the ultra softs that we have to achieve in PSO. Everybody thinks about the Pittsburgh Symphony as being a really sort of, you know, powerful, loud, rambunctious brass section, and it certainly can be, but the reality is that it's you know, we're pushing the limits on the lower end of the dynamic spectrum, sometimes even more than the high end. So this one really helped me dial in my tapers and you know, pianissimo attacks, that sort of thing. So I really felt it was a better choice in that regard. It also seemed to do something a little more positive for my articulation, but that's maybe just a personal thing. Anyway, I could go on, but that's the gist of it.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you about what I play, and I play a Verist Everest underpart with a Paxman 5L rim. Now, My Everest on the part is the metric thread variation. So that way I was able to use the Paxman rim on it. Now, we decided to go with the name metric just because some other manufacturers do for the PHC style rim junction and threads. Between you and me, there's nothing metric about it. It does not line up with any sort of metric measurement. It's another imperial measurement that's just wider. So you can keep that secret between us. The Paxman, the reason why I like to use a mouthpiece with this junction is because I like to use larger diameter rims in general. With my large lips, larger diameter rims work better. And with the larger, so first, let me make sure there's no misunderstanding. When I say a larger inner diameter rim, I'm talking about the rim itself, from one side of the inside to the other side of the inside. But there is another diameter that no one thinks about, that you really don't have to think about much. That's actually the diameter of the cup on a screw rim. And that's called the junction. And the reason why I like to use the wider junction is because when you use a narrower junction with the wider rim, within the rim itself has to come down like that in order to meet the narrower junction. If you use a wide rim with the wider junction, instead of coming down so steeply, it can come down in a less steep manner and then hit that wider junction. Now, I believe that makes a difference with the larger inner diameter rims, especially because I really, really like the Paxman rims. I paid a visit to London back in 2023, and we've been long-time dealers of Paxman, so I wanted to go see the shop and visit them. And while I was there, I was trying out the mouthpieces. You know, I haven't really played with Paxman mouthpieces much. Now, you may be saying to yourself, but Derek, you just said you were longtime vendors of Paxman and you've shared booths with them for many years and been right next to them. What do you mean you haven't tried their mouthpieces much before? And I would tell you to shut up, and I just haven't.
Whoa. It's a family show, come on.
Yeah. But I tried the Paxman 5LX rim and 5L rims, and I fell in love. And that's the rim I've been using ever since. Now our Everest underparts only came out this past summer. So what I was using before then is an Alpine mouthpiece. I was using the Alpine Titleist mouthpiece, which also has a PHC rim junction and threading. But what I find with this mouthpiece, with the Everest, I like the 17 bore. So 17 bore, just like Mark's H3. And I find the smaller the bore, the cleaner the articulation is. So I've never really liked my articulation very much on larger bore mouthpieces. It just sounds a little less defined. That's just me. I'm not saying that you cannot have clean articulation on a larger bore mouthpiece. That would be insane, because you could point out lots of players who use much larger bores and sound awesome. But for me, the smaller bore helps my articulation. And the shape of the cup is kind of a bowl funnel combo, which I think works really well. It gives it a really special tone that I really like. So that basically sums up the reasons why I use it. It gives me a really nice tone. The larger inner diameter, and by the way, if you have large lips and you find yourself having a problem with flexibility, 1, or depth in the low range, 2, you may want to consider a larger inner diameter rim. Before, when I used smaller rims, I would practice getting a good tone, practice getting a low register, and it just wouldn't happen. Everything sounded tight. In retrospect, I believe that I was trying to stuff my lips into a space that was just too small and didn't allow for enough flexibility. So if you're having those issues and you have larger lips, you may want to try a larger mouthpiece. But this is what works for me. So let's talk about some other options here. So Mark said he uses the H3 mouthpiece, but we also have an H1, an H2, and an H4. So let's do a little comparison of the sound. Could you play something on your H3?
Sure.
Try that with an H1.
Okay, got to change the rim here real quick. Give me a second.
Of course, we'll do an edited version where they won't get to see this part. Feel between those two mouthpieces?
You know, it's kind of hard to say. I tried. It's hard to be objective when you're playing, you know. And so
right.
I'd want to go back and listen, of course. I do feel like there's a more sense of immediacy maybe in this one. You know, probably some higher overtones, brought out rather with this shape of cup. It's a little more bowl-shaped. So, you know, I don't know. That was my immediate impression. I didn't play too much, so it would be hard to really go further than that at this point. But.
Well, yeah. Sitting next to you, what I heard was that the H3 sounded a lot more focused, while the H1 sounded a lot more spread.
Interesting.
But I do have chat open, so we want your feedback. What difference did you hear? So I have more limited options of other things to show because I use the metric thread, but I do have a few others here. So first, let me play something on my Everest Cup. And as usual in the live streams, I had not even thought about what I was going to play until this moment. I still haven't figured it out. Let's see what comes out. So I will switch my Everest Cup for an Alpine Titleist. Right there. I felt that the Titleist had a few more higher overtones to it. But that was the main thing that I heard. What did you hear sitting next to me?
Yeah, it seemed a little more compact right here.
That this one seemed a little bit more compact than the Everest?
Yep.
Okay. So why don't we try, for you, let's hear the H3 again. just so we always have a basis. Try something completely different. This is one of the newer mouthpieces that we have in the shop, and this is a Kantasanu. Okay, so what did you feel as far as the difference?
Certainly lively. I like that. I mean, I know nothing about this. Like, you just handed me a mouthpiece. So I thought it sounded good.
Okay. Yeah, it sounded to me on this side that it wasn't quite as focused as the H3, but also wasn't quite as spread as the H1. Had a pretty good sound to it.
So maybe somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So what I'd really like to show with all of this is just how much of a difference a different mouthpiece can make. So now I'm handing Mark an Everest mouthpiece. You'll notice this is silver plated. That's just because this was the final prototype for the two-piece mouthpieces. Okay, so what did you feel?
It definitely felt a little tighter than the Kantasanu. Yeah, I mean, as far as the sound goes, it felt like it was a little more constrained in a way. I don't even know how to describe it. I was almost hoping for a little more color in that one, but that was just my impression, just picking it up. So,
So what I heard over here was that the Everest, compared to your H3, had a little less depth of the sound when you were playing it.
That's probably what I was feeling. I mean, that checks out.
So we'll give Mark a break here. And I'll play again. By the way, any requests for mouthpieces you want to hear, you can also put in chat. I haven't seen anything in chat, so I don't know if my chat monitor is broken or if no one's talking. But feel free to ask any questions. But I see 17 of you are watching. That may not be good for a game streamer, but that is great for a horn streamer.
It's all relative.
So that was the Everest again, my normal mouthpiece, the Paxman 5L with the Everest. But now I'm going to try something else we have in the shop. And that is Paxman 5A mouthpiece cup. Did you hear any difference there?
Yeah, that sounded a little more compact.
A little more compact.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Kind of, to me, the sound felt bigger on this one right here than the Everest. That was the main thing I picked up. And you were saying it's a little more compact. Okay. But we'll say it was a pretty big difference. Okay, so we have a question here from Ben. What are some things to look for when trying mouthpieces? Or is it largely just if it feels good? Do you want to take this one first?
Sure, yeah. Well, whether it feels good or not is important, right? So, and I think the question of does it feel good relates mostly, at least initially, primarily to the feel of the rim on your face. Derek was saying we all have different physiology. You know, if you have fuller lips, you might need a different rim diameter. You might like a different rim contour or shape. So all of those things matter. It does matter how it feels, right? Although that's not the most important thing. I would say try and go for balance. You know, when you're trying mouthpieces, bring some repertoire that you are preparing or in shape on that you are familiar with, right? And then make sure and test different registers and different characteristics. I would say generally, you know, in advising students and that sort of thing on mouthpiece selection, I just wouldn't really go too far in either direction of either large or small. I would say that relates both to cup and the bore size. So finding sort of a middle ground, a piece of equipment that can do what you need it to do for almost everything that you're going to do on a regular basis. So sort of what I would take into work is something that I know can be reliable for the vast majority of what I'm going to be doing. That said, you know, if you've got a particular, you know, screaming high week, or you're playing a solo that's, you know, just super high in the register, that would be the time to explore something, a different option maybe, whether it's a solo or a particular piece. You know, I would say be open to experimenting at that time for something that leans in the direction that you need it to go. So it really is dependent on your needs, but you know, to get what we would call like a daily driver mouthpiece, I would say look for balance. Don't go too far in either direction. You know, beyond the feel of the rim, the cup shape, you know, is going to influence certain things. So I would try not to go into it with too many preconceived notions, and just bring a trusted friend or a teacher, or coming here to Houghton Horns to try mouthpieces. We have a great staff that can always give you feedback, but we're not pushy about stuff. So this is a great place to come try equipment, not just mouthpieces. But it's important also to have that, you know, a person with you to sort of help analyze. Because I know that myself, I almost don't trust myself when I'm just trying equipment alone. I mean, there are certain moments of sort of epiphany that you might have, but it's always good to have somebody else in the room.
Mm-hmm. Someone to tell you that, hey, you know, that actually doesn't sound that good, or, you know, I don't think that actually made much of a difference. And also someone to just tell you, hey, you're sounding good on what you have. That might be the answer. Although never ever discount how much of a difference equipment can make. I know there are people out there who will brag about the fact that they're still using the same MDC that they got in 6th grade. Now they're, off to college, and they're like, I've never changed and I never will. When, clearly everyone looking at them could tell, you could really benefit from a different mouthpiece. So you don't want to be the kind of person who says, I don't ever need to try equipment. You don't want to be switching all the time either. But, if you run across someone who said you never need to try different equipment, you always stay on what you have, just ignore those people.
Right. Well, I think it's also worth mentioning that there's never been a better time to experiment, right? If you've been on the same thing forever, I think it's a rather healthy, neurotic approach to feel like, most of these issues can be solved by practice and adequate time in the practice room. And that's a healthy approach, but you don't get 100% of the way there all the time. I always like to, when people approach me with mouthpiece questions and they're looking to try different things, the thing that we can offer here, which is really special, is everything is so modular, and we've gone to great lengths to do that, even with the new metric system, the rims that we have, that junction, and expanding that aspect. But also, I can take someone who's maybe only comfortable on, the MC or MDC mouthpiece they've been playing on since they started, and we can make little incremental changes in a given direction depending on where they want to go. And so I think, it's really nice to have that capability, whereas, I years ago when I was starting out, those options, really didn't exist. So I think it's always worth taking a look. On the other hand, I can't understand why people would be resistant to trying new things because they know what works, and sometimes it does get confusing when you're trying a lot of equipment at once. So having some guidance in that is important, and I would say it's even crucial. So I get both sides, but finding the right piece of equipment, if you get 2% more out of a better piece of equipment, you'll take it. You'll take that 2%.
And notice, Mark mentioned the modularity of the mouthpieces, but notice we haven't been changing rims. And that's because really, in order to give you a good sense of how the different mouthpieces compare, at least the mouthpiece cups compare, it's better to use a mouthpiece rim that you're comfortable with and that will work. For example, if I were to just start trying one-piece mouthpieces here, I'm going to pick a mouthpiece that is very, very different from what I normally use rim-wise. So this is an Everest one-piece, so it's the same cup that I play with a 17-millimeter rim. And we can compare that to my normal Paxman rim. So the normal Paxman rim. Now this is the Everest mouthpiece with 17-millimeter rim. I'm not faking, by the way. I just really can't play.
It's just too narrow, right?
Yeah. That's enough of that.
Yeah. We're talking with other brass players, especially trombonists, they always look at the size of horn mouthpieces and they just can't believe how small those things are. They're like, how do you guys do that, you know? And of course we're used to it, but even within, you know, again, it's something that's come along very recently, is this ability to really adjust the rim diameter. So as small as it already is, you know, you have some flexibility in there, and you know, the difference between you know, on paper and with a micrometer between a 17 millimeter diameter rim and an 18.5 millimeter diameter rim is so minimal, right? But when you put it on your face, the feeling is extremely different. I mean, it feels, so when it maps onto your physiology, right, it's a totally huge difference between those measurements. So there's a lot of room to work with in there and play with in there, and different pros and cons to going, you know, more narrow or wider. Yeah. I think we have another question on there.
But that being said, I'm not going to be alone to embarrass myself playing something very different.
All right. Okay. So I don't know what this is. Hold on. You want to hold that for a second?
Sure.
Okay.
This is an Ultimate Brass 1782 Plus.
Okay.
The cup and bore is very similar to the H3, but the rim, he'll see.
The rim is very wide, diameter-wise, and it's also thick and flat, a lot more so than I'm used to. I mean, this is, yeah, it's a big change. I don't even know what. It feels like I'm playing like a bass trombone mouthpiece or something. Which you think would be super dialed in, for me is not. It's actually so, this is just so out of my comfort zone that you know, it doesn't really, I can't see any aspects immediately that it would improve. You know, maybe I'm wrong, got to be open-minded, but yeah, no thanks.
Yeah. But the point of that was like, if you haven't tried different mouthpieces, you could be on something that is really the wrong thing for you.
Right, and I think also if you tried mouthpieces just for high register, we get this question a lot. I need to improve my high range. I need a high range mouthpiece. It's like, okay, we can sell you a high range mouthpiece, but where is that going to leave the rest of your playing, right? So, I mean, being good stewards of people that come in as customers and are looking for, you know, solutions, I think we have to be honest about trying to balance their, you know, what they're looking for with the reality that, you know, most of the time you need to be able to play through the range of the instrument, right? Mm-hmm.
So we have a question from Blue Grin. How does a silver-plated brass mouthpiece compare to a raw brass mouthpiece in terms of sound? So Mark's going to be the best person to answer this because the H3 mouthpiece that he's using right now is a lie.
Easy now.
We took one of those the H3 mouthpiece he's using right now out of our display. The H3 mouthpiece he currently uses, he had silver plated. Have you noticed a difference in sound?
You know, I'm sure there is a difference in sound. I have not been overly consumed with comparing the two. The reason that I initially did that was I thought I was experiencing some form of allergy, but it wasn't. Turns out that wasn't it at all. So I wanted to eliminate that variable by getting the mouthpiece silver plated. That brings up the point that, you know, in the case that you know, some people are very sensitive, so maybe a raw brass underpart is gonna, you know, irritate them, or, you know, I think especially with the underpart, that's not the majority of what's touching your face. It's the rim. So I would first start with the rim in terms of being hypoallergenic. But anyway, that's a whole other story, but something to consider, right? I'm sure there is a difference. You would think that, you know, the silver plating would add a little more life to it, especially if it's, but we're also talking about microns, right? I mean, it's like such a small layer of metal. I mean, so I don't know. I mean, I'm afraid I can't say definitively. I mean, I would say, again, it probably makes a difference. It's probably minimal or not that noticeable. But we could always, you know, that maybe that's a future live stream topic. I don't know. We could mess around with that. We do offer, I think this is the most important thing you could take from it, again, in an effort to just be really accessible for a lot of players. In addition to things being modular, we have things that come in different materials and plating options. So you can go with gold plating. All of our H-coat rims are so great. They're really popular with people. I get a lot of positive feedback on those. And again, that's something that's come along pretty recently. That's the place, you know, the places that's the most in contact with your body, that being a hypoallergenic and super tough, hard material underneath that hypoallergenic coating it's so great for the, you know, biocompatibility aspect, but also just longevity and durability. So we try and offer so many of those options, and I think, you know, everyone can find something that works for them.
So we have a question from Mariella. Do you think the Everest underpart would be a good option for a low resistance horn, specifically an Elkhart 8D with a Patterson lead pipe? So this is kind of a question kind of verging on, do different mouthpieces work better on different horns? And as far as mouthpiece cups, I would say yes. Not mouthpiece rims. I think once you've found a good mouthpiece rim for yourself, like, stick with that. That's a good rim. Stick with that rim, regardless of the horn that's under it. Now, as far as mouthpiece cups, some mouthpieces are really good all-arounders. Some mouthpieces, you know, only work well on certain types of horns. And I've heard many other people use you want to use a low resistance mouthpiece on a horn that's a little tighter and a high resistance mouthpiece on a horn that's a little looser. And I don't have a definitive answer to that question, because the answer is maybe. The thing is that it's not really a rule, because if you look back, you know, to the 50s and 60s, when most people in the United States were playing Kind 8Ds or other similarly big horns, they were also pairing them with really large mouthpieces. Fun fact, throughout high school, I played on a Giardinelli C1. If you've ever seen a C1, the bore, it just looks like the bore isn't there. The mouthpiece just like keeps going. And I struggled with that all through high school.
It builds character.
Yeah, I don't even know how I ended up with that mouthpiece.
Yeah, well, a lot of people did. Yeah. You know? A lot of people were those single-digit bore mouthpiece paradigms for a long time. But there is something interesting. I would say generally that is a pretty good rule to start with, right? Like, if you're going to be on a horn that's more resistant, maybe temper that with a larger cup or a larger bore. I will say there's a funny thing that happens here, because even though the bell throat on a Crosby style horn is large, we tend to think of that as a large horn, but the acoustical resistance, because we're not dealing with such open tubing as a Geyer style horn, you know, we have, you know, it's tighter plumbing basically. So there is an aspect of resistance that I grew up as an 8D player essentially, not my entire formative years, but there's something that I do miss about that sort of. So it's, in a way, again, it all comes down to preference, but it's not a bad idea. I mean, certainly in my case, you know, I go with a small bore mouthpiece because I play a Rauch, and it's, you know, it's pretty low resistance, I would say. I mean, overall, it's a pretty free-blowing horn. At least that's my, perspective on it. Others might disagree. But I think a good starting point is generally like, hey, if you have a really, free-blowing horn, maybe tighten up the mouthpiece and start from there, and you can always go bigger or smaller accordingly. Not a bad place to start.
Yeah. So I hope that answered your question. We have a thumbs up from Kevin, thank you, and a comment from Donald, love the new Everest. I'm glad you like it. I really think it has a really special sound to it, and obviously I use it, so I really like it. We also sell a lot of them, so a lot of other people like them too. But I'm not seeing any more questions here. Did you have any other comments you wanted to make?
Might as well just mention that I'm in town for a little while. We're working on some other projects here while I'm here, and Derek was kind enough to invite me to do the live stream. I don't do these very often, so it's kind of a new experience for me. But I just, I'm not in the shop that often because I have obligations with Pittsburgh Symphony, and I don't get to be here that often. So it's a real pleasure to just be here in this new space that we have. I just want to emphasize how great it is, what a great place this is to come and play and try equipment. We have this amazing stage and performance hall that we're coming to you live now from, and we want to really show this space off, and the only way to really experience it is to do it in real life right here. So you can come try things here, you can come visit for events that we're having. We've got a lot of stuff coming up in the fall. We're really trying to spread the word. A lot of people are probably familiar with the fact that we have a new building, but you don't really get the sense of it until you visit in person. So it's like a treat for me just to be here. I can't wait for all of the great things that can come out of this space. And we appreciate all of your support, following us and being customers, and that allows us to provide this type of experience to you. So that's what we're about. And also, when we're talking about mouthpiece underparts, careful, because I always think about, my mind always, probably autocorrect, right? If you're typing, if you're spelling this out, it might autocorrect to underpants, and we don't want to talk about underpants. We're talking about underparts, okay? So just got to be careful there when you're texting or sending messages about this.
Right.
Okay.
Something to watch out for.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, if you come to Houghton Horns, you can try out instruments on the stage. I don't know of many other places in America, definitely no other brass shops that I know of, that you can come pick up an instrument and try it on stage. And when you come here for an appointment, there's no pressure to buy anything. There is no fee that we're charging for you to try something out on the stage. And even though we still have appointments with our new building, you don't have to make an appointment. So feel free to just show up during business hours. If you show up at 8 p.m., you're on your own.
Yeah, forget it.
But show up during business hours, and you can just try instruments. And assuming the stage is free, you can try instruments on the stage. You can play to an empty audience, like we're talking to an empty audience right now in front of us.
Don't.
By the way, if anyone's interested in having me do a talk or something like this, and actually inviting a live audience here, so a live stream with an audience, let me know, and I'll try to put something together. Because it would be nice to actually, I've done these talks at different symposiums and workshops in the past, and at many different colleges. By the way, I will be one of the guests at the Southwest Horn Workshop in Utah this January, so you can hear me live there. But if you want to do something live here on our stage here in Texas, just let me know, and I'll try to put something together. So we have a few other last-minute questions from Ben. Where did Mark go to school?
Ben, I went to the Eastman School of Music for my undergrad, and then
And then he won a
And
job.
I got a job after that. I was very lucky, but I also took a lot of auditions and worked really hard. So.
I guess it's just the thing, you know, sometimes we get really jealous of people who just seem like they have it so easy and they just like win jobs, but there's a lot of work that goes for anyone who wins any job.
Yeah, my parents are, most of you probably familiar with them, you know, they're also owners of the business and they're horn players, and I grew up in a house where I was hearing the horn all the time, and they didn't push me to play horn, but at one point I gravitated towards it and I really wanted to do it. And I think it was really the sound that you know was so special to me. But they were very honest. They told me very early on. They supported me, but they told me, you know, this is a really cutthroat business, and if you're not prepared and you don't start taking auditions and, you know, taking advantage of all the performance opportunities you have, it might not turn out so well, right? So I kind of had that dose of reality early on, and I think that was really helpful. But that said, yeah, I got some luck too along the way. So you need everything.
And we have a question from Donald. Is it safe to say that deeper cups like narrower inner diameter rims and shallower like larger? So I think he's asking if deeper cups work better with narrower inner diameter rims and shallower cups work with larger inner diameter rims. I don't necessarily think that's the case. When you're dealing with a two-piece mouthpiece, remember the cup volume stays the same. You do add some volume because the top of the mouthpiece rim gets larger, so you do have a little bit more volume in the cup, but not so much that you would say, oh, if you're using a larger inner diameter rim, pair that with a shallow cup, or vice versa. Now, with some one-piece mouthpieces, depending on the design, and this does apply to our Varus VX mouthpiece. That is a Shoki. That is not a Varus VX.
There's a lot of mouthpieces over there, to be fair.
So the design of our Varus VX mouthpieces, where the cup itself actually changes volume as the rim changes size. So every single VX mouthpiece has the exact same volume. If it has a larger inner diameter, then more volume is taken from the cup. And if it has a smaller inner diameter, there's more volume in the cup. So on a one-piece line like that, it also doesn't make a difference because the volume is staying the same. But some cups do, like if it has a larger inner diameter rim, the volume of the cup is just generally larger. So in that case, you may want to choose a shallower cup because the volume of the cup is larger because the larger inner diameter of the rim actually makes it so the entire cup is a little bit larger. I hope that wasn't too confusing. Sometimes I have a hard time explaining these things in an understandable way.
I mean, these things are also probably better. I mean, it's good that we're talking about it, but again, for a question like that, the best thing to do is to come here and try stuff because you can pair all sorts of combinations. There's really no right or wrong. If you can't get here, we have a really great shipping policy and a return policy so that oftentimes, you pay, I just want to get it right here, free shipping on most of that stuff, right, would be covered by free shipping. Mm-hmm. So if you can't get out here to this wonderful building, I would encourage you to just place an order for some items, and many of you do this, but it's just a reminder of how easy it is. And in the age of Amazon, we're trying to match that accessibility and ease of purchasing and trial. So you can try as much as you want and then send back, for just a small shipping fee returning, right? I mean, and we're talking about mouthpieces that are very light, so obviously not much weight to ship, but it's very affordable. We try and make that as easy as possible. We're always looking for ways to improve that process. So let us know if you have any thoughts on it.
And of course, you can always find us at a show. Our next show is, our next show is going to be Midwest in December in Chicago. So me and my wife, Casey, will be there once again, and we'll have all the mouthpieces there for you to try. And then, of course, we'll be at most of the spring workshops as well. I think that's it for questions. I think we've been here for about an hour, so it's probably time for us to wrap it up.
All right.
Thank you very much for joining today, Mark.
Yep.
Hope this is not the last one that you joined for.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. And you'll see me again.